Welcome to the Honest Jams Songwriting Podcast, the podcast where two friends have an outlandish idea to write a new song every week.
Yeah. It's mighty unusual as well, I'd say.
This week's topic was unusual words. I'm Eyal.
I'm Walker.
And with us today in the studio across in the ISO room, Ethan Fox Tucker is here too, our bandmate, musician extraordinaire. Owner of a pot shop. Owner of a pot shop.
Yeah.
Isn't there a song, owner of a something shop? Donut shop?
Lonely Heart?
Yeah, Lonely Heart, yeah.
Is there a parody that's like owner of a something shop?
I don't think so.
Oh.
Maybe there should be.
I think
there will be. Tune in next week.
That's my Berenstein bear.
Nice to be here.
Ethan, we usually like to start with our guests by just learning a little bit about, their musical upbringing. Do you remember how music kind of came into your life in general?
So both my parents are pretty musical people. My mom is a kindergarten through 8th grade music teacher, just retired this last year. And then my dad has been pretty involved in some folk bands when I was a kid too. So grew up listening to a lot of music in the house, a lot of also playing along with my parents, which was great.
Cute.
And
like in what just like for fun, like at home?
Mostly for fun, yeah. We I think my kind of first memories of actually playing something with them was I learned how to play Nowhere Man by the Beatles on the piano, and my mom was playing the bass line in the left hand. I was doing the chords in the right, and my dad was strumming some guitar somewhere. I think my brother was playing drums on a pot in the pan sort of type thing. But yeah, there's a lot of music in the house, and music is pretty important to both of them and to the kind of family in general. So
listeners might remember Tom and Laura from the Lullabies episode.
Oh yeah, one of our first.
Spoke to them.
Totally. Lots of that too. Yeah, a lot of lullabies.
Were you drawn to like a specific instrument initially?
Initially, I was drawn to piano, but mostly that was kind of at the behest of my mom, who insisted that Sam and I both take piano lessons starting in about 3rd grade. At the time, I was thinking it would be something I would be really, really into and get more into classical piano. And kind of over the years, I'd realized that I loved piano for what it taught me kind of foundationally about music, but it wasn't the instrument that I ended up being drawn to the most. And that what I play now is mostly the piano stuff just for my own recordings and for fun. But it's a great instrument to start on.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember the first thing that was kind of like, this is like my instrument?
I thought it was guitar for a while too, as my second instrument. But in high school, there was an awesome bass player in our jazz band, and he left junior year. And I'd been in the band playing piano and guitar at the time. And the teacher was like, "Hey, Ethan, would you mind trying bass just to see what it feels like?"
Thank you to that teacher.
Yeah, thanks to that teacher. But yeah, that started feeling pretty quickly like an instrument that I was really drawn to and felt more comfortable playing than other instruments, especially live. So that now, and still continues to be I feel like I have the best connection to a song and maybe to other musicians when I'm playing bass versus other things.
But when you perform your songs that you've written, you end up mostly on guitar.
It's true, yeah. I haven't put together much of a band to play things yet, so...
Have you ever considered fronting a band while playing bass?
Yes, definitely. That would be the goal, actually, if I can get something in the works this next year. The bass, for me, how it functions in a lot of songs, at least the songs that I write, it has, for lack of a better word, kind of an element of control, where I feel I can impact the song from either like a really solid rhythmic element or I guess mostly, rhythm and I guess some of the sort of bass tones and notes. But I just feel like it's really important for me to feel confident while I'm playing it. And guitar, sometimes I'm thinking more actively about what I'm doing and trying to sing at the same time. And so actually playing bass and singing for me is easier sometimes than playing guitar and singing.
Yeah.
When you discovered bass in that way, did you have any bassists that you looked up to or particularly liked?
Definitely in the early days, I was very into Paul McCartney's bass lines and James Jamerson and a lot of more Motown bass players. Recently now, I'm kind of getting more into things that are a little more on the funky side, but also fun. So I think Joe Dart's a pretty amazing bass player from Wolfpack. He's got an amazing pocket and timing.
And he shows you that.
Yeah, totally.
What does he do? I'm not familiar.
He's very, what's the word for it? histrionic. I don't know, like he's just like, you know, that like head bob that people do.
Like the way that we dance in Portland.
Okay, so take that and amplify it like 9,000%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like elastic
he's a
neck.
bobber?
Yeah.
His neck is like kind of like moves and snaps back into place on the beat.
Instead of the guitar player's face, he has the bass player's neck. No,
yeah.
that doesn't quite work.
Yeah, I still appreciate, I mean, all those bass players, and there's a lot of different ways that bass can impact a song. So,
were you getting formal training all through this time, or were you just kind of discovering it through your own?
I stopped taking formal lessons when I was maybe in, I think, 10th grade, and that was the end of my piano career at that point. Guitar, I picked up just because I wanted to, and my dad played it, and he sort of gave me a guitar and was like, hey, you can figure this out, and I figured some stuff out. And then bass, I only ever took lessons actually in college, and that was about a year or so of lessons, but I realized pretty quickly that I didn't want to do sort of classical bowed bass, which that program was kind of directing me towards. And so I got to work with a bass teacher there on things that I wanted to learn, which was nice. But beyond that, it's been a lot of self-discovery.
When talking with like people that are like come up through classical training or kind of are like self-taught, I feel like one of the big distinctions that often you can see is how they use their ears. And like, I feel like I just really admire the way that like you can really just hear like the way notes, and probably part of it is just playing bass where you're kind of thinking about your role kind of like in chords a lot.
As opposed to the mindless strummer, the mindless guitar
Or
strummer.
mindless keyboard player even. Like, I don't know, I can have every note of the chord represented multiple times,
Oh, yeah.
you know? So it's like, am I really making any decisions here? Did you at some point because you do seem to have that formal understanding of chords and structure and stuff like that. Was that all picked up on your own?
I think that was definitely reinforced by some early theory classes and things that my piano teacher, I think, did a good job of maybe even subtly teaching me some of that stuff without beating me over the head with it. I was not a great theory student. I'm still not a very good theory student. And in college, I wasn't great either. But ear training and sort of that discipline has always been something I'm really drawn to. And I think it's probably been the most valuable thing that I've had sort of formal education in, just being able to hear those harmonies and
so you've
sort
taken
of
like oral skills type courses.
Yeah, that was kind of more of the focus I took in college. Through kind of more some of the singing that I do. I was in some of the chamber choirs there and other small groups, and a lot of that was doing ear training and some sight singing things too. But I think in general, even back in the day learning to play piano, I learned a lot based on ear. Even though I was supposed to be learning how to read the music, I got pretty good at being able to mimic something or
it shows now.
That's or remember it at least. So
I also took piano lessons in 3rd grade, and I would take it home, memorize it, and then show it to the teacher, and she saw right through. But then
were you like looking at the music, but like pretending to read it, kind of?
Yeah, I was like pretending to read it, but if she pulled it away, I would just keep going. But jokes on her. I ended up deciding I only would play ragtime from then on, and I got like a third way through the Entertainer and then quit piano. So,
like you got to the part that people don't know.
Yes.
You only need that little bit, People are like, okay, you can stop that now. Thanks.
It's like the flat earth. You just fall off the edge of the Entertainer.
I've been through many songs. Has recording always been a thing you've been interested in, or is that a more recent thing?
I've been doing that also, at least home recordings, I think since probably senior year of high school.
What were you using?
We got a new computer that time, and it had GarageBand on it. So
nice.
I was super excited. I just used the mic that was built into the computer and a 1/4-inch cable plugged into an 1/8-inch headphone jack that somehow got the audio in there.
Right.
And it was usually kind of buzzy, and it was difficult to get volumes quite right. But yeah,
multi-track recording though, that easily, like
it was great.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time in the family sort of computer room, locking the door, not letting anyone else in because it took a while to get it all put together. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of recording, and I have been doing it ever since then. I think I was talking with actually a friend last night about this, but for me, a lot of recording, I think, functions kind of almost like keeping a journal or maybe a little more sort of philosophically like a therapy, sort of.
Yeah.
Okay, helps me get things that are in my head out, whether those are musical ideas or just things that have been on my mind.
Yeah.
And a lot of it are things I don't necessarily share with other people, not because I necessarily don't want to, but it's
not for them.
It's not for them, or at least, I guess it's just more for me sometimes.
Yeah.
You're also a really easygoing person to get along with, which is invaluable in a bandmate situation.
Thank you.
So maybe processing that stuff, it's not your first thought to process it with someone else.
Yeah, I think that's true, actually. I've definitely had a couple collaborations in my life with other people who I songwrite with, and those have been really fruitful and lucky, like also fairly easy connections, which is great. But I think my first instinct often is to kind of map things out on my own and then bring in other people for advice or for other things that I can't manifest or make on my own.
Because you have control issues?
Probably. Oh, definitely.
Well, you don't need anybody else. You don't need backup singers because you can reach those.
Or
those
backup
highs.
guitar players.
It's true.
You always have like multi-layered harmonies on your
I do
guitars.
have a lot of stuff. I
love that.
But I'm a very opinionated musician, and it's much of an easygoing person as I am. So,
Right.
I think it's
And for your songs, you just want
Yeah.
them to be the way you want them to be.
it's hard to give it up. Although I've also some of the things I'm most proud of that I've ever made have been with other people in other bands, just because those things I am able, I think, sometimes to get outside of my own head and realize like, oh, this is the culmination of all this stuff is much more powerful sometimes than just what's in your own head, because that can be limiting too. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
With the way you're saying you record, like that journal style thing, is it just like habitual at this point, or is there kind of like a discipline element to it where you're like, I'm just gonna, even no matter how I'm feeling, I'm just gonna keep doing this thing?
I've tried kind of both approaches, I think, sort of organically over the last couple of years. At this point, I think I would say overall it's a little more habitual. It's something I don't necessarily set aside time every day to work on something, but I usually have something that's kind of floating around the back of my mind that either I want to get started on or work on if I've already started an idea. So I would say I sit down and work on music probably at least 5 or 6 times a week, but that could also be, a couple times in the same day, and I'll take a few days off in between.
Sure.
But I haven't grown tired of it, so I think that's
Yeah.
Yeah, and you just did the
important to me.
60-day song challenge, which we heard on a previous episode.
Yeah,
so
that's
you know
right.
you're capable of hitting it 6 times a week at least.
Yeah, certainly, and that was fun. I don't think that I could ever adopt that as my sort of full-time connection to
Yeah.
songwriting and recording, just because it can be a little exhausting. But
Yeah.
yeah, I like to kind of let it come as it feels natural and let that stuff out when I need to. And it just
Yeah.
happens to be that I end up doing it, several times a week.
Yeah. Well, we'd love to hear what you wrote for this week. But
Sure.
before we do, we always do this little segment.
What does the internet say on the topic of the day? And if it's wrong, you can let us know by using the internet too.
So we always do a little segment, Ethan, about something we found on the internet about the topic of the day. This one was a little hard to figure out what to look up, but what did you find?
The internet had so much to say. It had plenty unusual words and some unusual facts about the English language, which is where I
Ooh, nice.
chose to focus my research. Some of these sound a little outlandish, so if it is wrong, we can blame Grammarly or TranslateMedia.com or HistoryExtra.com. We will never blame
History
Wikipedia.
extra.
Just a little more about history.
That history is so extra.
It's a bit. This history, this timeline that we're in is a lot extra. So I have 3 items here, but before I get into them, I wanted to have you guys guess how often you think a new word is added to the dictionary.
Oh, every year.
Every year, how many? Do they just wait and update a bunch at once?
I feel like
or-
I hear, oh, that's interesting. Oh, well, maybe you just gave it away.
Well, that's what I thought until I read this
Yeah.
figure, which frankly, Grammarly.com, I'm not sure about this. It says a new word is added to the dictionary every 2 hours,
Maybe they're just averaging out an amount.
equaling 4,000 annually.
And
Wow.
I didn't check that math either.
That's a whole lot of
How many
words
are
annually.
removed?
Oh, yeah.
It didn't talk about that.
Interesting.
That must have been on another listicle
Yeah.
or something. All right, let's get into these items. With that many words, some are bound to be misprints which are known as ghost words that have no meaning and just end up in the dictionary because they were misprinted. Here's an example. The word Dord, D-O-R-D, appeared in the dictionary for 8 years in the mid-20th century. It was a science-related entry. The chemistry editor sent in a slip reading D or D continued / density, and this was intended to add density to the existing list of words that the letter D can abbreviate. So D or D became Dord.
Dord.
But I mean, I've been Dord. You guys ride bikes. You've all been
Oh,
Dord
yeah.
before, right? Petition to change Dord
Bring it
to that
back.
spelling.
That's a
Bring
real fuck
it
up though,
back.
as a editor in the dictionary. It's like that you had one job.
Well, yeah, but the way I don't know if it's typefacing or typography, the way that you had to physically move all of those little furniture, the little letters around, that D space, O-R space, like they have to put enough spaces in it already to make it clear. So I'm going to forgive them. I think it's an honest mistake.
Dord.
Dord. Okay, item 2. English is the de facto language of the air, of aviation. It really is. I mean, international crews all speak English on flights. Have you guys noticed?
I thought you were getting all elemental on us.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
It's on the wind. It's beautiful.
We're going to talk about air science next. No, I hadn't noticed this in my international travels or in watching movies or anything, but English has been decided to be the language that all countries' pilots speak to each other. This was cemented in a 1944 convention in Chicago aiming to resolve some of the problems of air travel at the time, communication between different languages and stuff. So, when I learned that, it seems unfair, but so is a lot of colonialism and imperialism. It doesn't seem right that English gets to be that one, but there is an argument, and there was an argument made then that pushed English ahead of some of the other contenders. And it is that it's a pretty egalitarian language, one that doesn't waste a lot of breath on civilities or honorifics. So if your plane is going down, you don't have to say, excuse me, your great respected elder, may I ask for your help? And,
How amazing would it be though if Esperanto was the language everybody spoke?
Are you reading my notes?
No.
Look, it says Esperanto of aviation. I mean, that Esperanto was later, right? Wasn't that like the 60s?
I don't know.
I don't know when it was, but they should. That would be a great use of Esperanto.
They're just the only place it's used in society is through pilots.
Yeah, and just to make air travel that much more terrifying for all the people to hear a language they can't place. I'm with you. Sign our petition, Ethan. It's going out later. Okay, final item. This one is related to gender, and we've probably all heard that pink used to be more associated with boys and blue was considered more feminine of a color. But did you know that the word girl used to just mean child? Could mean either.
Oh.
Until the late, this is the history extra part of this segment. Until the late 15th century, the word girl simply means a child of either sex. Boys, where they had to be differentiated, were referred to as knave girls, and girls in the female sense were called gay girls. Equally, a boy could be called a knave child and a girl a maiden child.
Whoa.
Why have we not heard about this? Is this real?
Good to know.
Grammarly and History Extra? I don't know about this, but maiden child really harkens back to a time of very short childhoods and like harsh realities
Totally.
coming up. You go from toddler to maiden child. So that's what the internet said to me. What did you find, Ale?
I just went a little more thinking about things that were unusual, and I found on Wikipedia a list of things considered unusual. So
what's the official name of that entry?
It's a category, lists of things considered unusual.
Okay.
So these are lists of unusual things that you can then click on and see what the list is. So there's things such as a list of unusual biological names, a list of cars with non-standard door designs, a list of unusual dismissals in international cricket, unusual drainage systems, place names considered unusual, and of course a list of people who died on the toilet. Yeah.
Elvis. Who else?
Is he one? Here, let me give you some examples from these lists.
I want to hear about those drainage strategies.
Drainage stores?
Drainage.
Well, if you go to the non-standard door designs, you got such non-standard designs as scissor doors, butterfly doors, suicide doors, swan doors, dihedral synchrohelix actuation doors, and of course, no doors.
Whoa.
No door.
The most unusual door of all. You want to hear some drainage systems?
Yeah, like what other ways are there?
All right, here we go. Drainage system. The following is a list of unusual drainage systems. There's the Cassequire Canal, natural waterway connecting the Orinoco and Amazon rivers.
Oh, so it's like specific
The
sites.
Chicago River and Calumet River artificially divert water from the Great Lakes to the Mississippi. The parting waters of Wyoming. Slims River.
I thought it was going to be like patents for gadgets to drain
Maybe
things.
that's on here. No. Drainage, I think, yeah, I guess they mean in a more geological way. Is that what they mean?
I'll have
List
to
of
revisit
bizarre
that
buildings.
It's time for a new list, maybe.
That's all I really found on the internet.
That's what the internet said.
All right, Ethan. Ready for a song?
Let's do it.
What did you make this week? What did you make this week? Tell us all about it. 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 Tell us all about it.
Okay. So, anything we need to know about your song before we listen to it?
By the way, you're first.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
We didn't say that.
Happy to be first. As I often do, write a lot about sort of relationships and love and loss and navigating some of that stuff. So that's kind of the direction I took this song. And I also sort of took it in a direction, I might say, that where I wanted to use the unusual words that were presented or on the list in a way that to me felt least unusual. That makes sense.
Yeah,
I
natural.
wanted to make a song that,
So
in
wait,
my mind,
let's talk real quick about the kind of
We found a
ground
list.
rules we laid.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
down.
we found a list. We searched unusual words and we found an article with 15 of the most unusual words
The 15 most unusual words in English
from culturesconnection.com.
you'll ever find in English.
Hey, they are
You
not
will-
messing around at culturesconnection.com.
Well, there'll be a
And
new
then-
one in
And
2
then
hours. So.
our challenge was to use 3 of them in our song lyrics.
Yes.
Proceed.
So yes. Yeah, my goal, I think, was to use 3 of the words off the list in a way that, to me, would come through the song, but not in a way that, to me, made it feel kind of comedic or jokey. I think my first inclination when I saw the list of words was kind of like, oh, some of these are words that I'm familiar with, but they're also words that have pretty interesting pronunciations and also interesting sort of syllable counts and things that
Yeah.
very specific. So I was trying to find ways of putting it in the song that still felt like something that I would normally write, just with a couple of words that, would be sort of things that might be kind of normally out of my vocabulary,
Yeah.
but would still fit my traditional songwriting ethos.
Do you feel like you used any words that we need a definition for before we?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So you kind of used some of the ones that you knew what they meant.
I
Alrighty.
chose 3 of them that are
Cool.
that were made sense to me.
Awesome. Let's hear it.
All
Do you have
right.
a name for the song?
The working title right now is just "Don't Know."
I'm gonna break your heart tonight. You've broken mine 1,000 times. We always seem to realign, serendipitously paired in life. Our choirs were the small complaints of swallowed words and measured space, but the joys they overwhelm the woes. As they say, it's how the story goes. Oh, I hope it's how my story goes. I guess I'm feeling afraid, don't know how it's gonna end. We've been cast in each other's place, but some yourself, unwrap your mind. Make a connection that is hard to find. A scrumptious piece of paradise, but only when we both play nice. Depending on which cards we show. As they say, that's how the story goes. Oh, I hope that's how my story goes. I guess I'm feeling afraid, don't know where it's gonna end. We've been cast in each other's place, but sometimes we understand. Maybe I'm feeling ashamed that I don't wanna see an end. Here I go breaking hearts again. Don't know how it's gonna end. We don't know how it's gonna end. We don't know how it's gonna end. We don't know how it's gonna end.
Woo!
Beautiful.
Thank
Sounds
you.
hot. Wow, that was awesome, Ethan.
Thanks so
love
much.
The words were serendipitous.
Ooh, choir. Yeah, I didn't know what a choir was. What is a choir?
25 sheets of paper bound together.
That's right.
Do you have them all memorized?
I mean, maybe they're not bound. They're just bound for transport, I believe.
Well, I liked that word because I was able to use it in a way that to my ear also sounded like choir, like CHOIR.
I think that's why the word's not as popular as it might be, because
Yeah.
it does sound like choir.
So technically I used it.
And then what was the third word?
Scrumptious.
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 Yeah.
That one surprised me to be on the list. Scrumptious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like a word that isn't that unusual.
Yeah, I mean, they started out the article with like serendipity,
Right.
scrumptious, and then there was another very
Well, serendipity-
normal sounding word.
You could make an argument for because it seems like they were saying that it's like a feeling word that doesn't really exist in some other languages. It's like unique to English. But
That makes
scrumptious
sense.
doesn't seem like that's true.
Scrumptious they liked because of its onomatopoeic properties.
Right.
Mm.
So how did you write the song? What did you kind of start with?
Started with the bass line, just a little riff, and the very first couple of lines just kind of came to me.
Uh-huh.
And so I kind of built it around that. And then
Like you laid that down?
I was just playing it on the bass actually. And then actually I tried laying the bass part down first. Then I realized I need a little more context to build the song. And so I switched over to keyboards and kind of fleshed it out with that. And then I move, at least recently with songwriting, I kind of move in section by section. So I figured out the entire kind of verse section, then I figured out the whole chorus section, and then I kind of figured out how I wanted to move back and forth between those and any other little sections that I wanted to fill in. But
Do you ever have trouble with like matching tones when you do it that way?
sometimes,
I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter if your chorus has a different tone than your
Sure.
salsa.
I mean, luckily, I think most of the instruments that I use regularly, when I'm working on a song, I kind of leave them in the setting they're on. You know, whether
Yeah.
that's where the tone knob is in the bass or guitar. All the keyboards I'm using are all pretty much MIDI things, so those just instantly know what it's supposed to be when you plug it back into something. So it's easy to match some of those tones. The only time I ever run into that is more often when if I take a break from a song for a couple of weeks and come back to it, then I have to do a little more critical thinking about, where was that mic on the acoustic guitar, or, even if it's just, are the strings older now? Does it sound radically different? But in general, if I'm working on a song and I give myself usually a couple days is kind of the time frame each song takes me, then I try to keep most of those settings pretty much the same and easily at hand, so I can just add and subtract as much as I need.
That's nice to know what the overall mood is of a section before you go on to the next one, though, versus like
Right.
just sitting with the guitar and writing and doing that part of it later.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a challenge sometimes for me because I can get bogged down in getting the first like 30 seconds of a song sounding just the way I want it, and that includes like all of the compression and reverbs and delays, and all of a
And
sudden
you're like, this isn't going anywhere.
it's not going anywhere, or it's like, oh, like this is almost it can sometimes sort of stymie me a little bit too, because then thinking of the next section coming up, but having all these other sort of elements to think about too can be a little overwhelming. I have been trying actually actively to do a little more songwriting, like getting all a keyboard part done, a whole guitar part done before I start adding any auxiliary elements to something, especially with messing with some of the more things you can add in terms of reverb and delay type things. Just because I think looking at a song holistically at the end of it and then thinking like, oh, maybe I actually don't need such a heavy compression on this one track because these other tracks are filling that space or something of that nature. But it's hard to hear that until you get all those things tracked. So
Yeah. I mean, plus what you're doing obviously works.
well, thank you. It works for me,
Like
at least. So.
Yeah, I mean, you wrote the vocals over like complete instrumentals, basically, or do you?
Pretty much. I think I wrote maybe the first couple stanzas when I just had kind of half the song fleshed out. And then, but yeah, my typical process would be to have a vocal idea, but nothing concrete. Finish pretty much all the instrumental stuff, with the exception maybe of a couple of instruments that I would want to weave in with the vocals, just as that's probably one of my favorite things, is going back through a song after most of the vocals are tracked and finding little pockets where a guitar or a keyboard could do something a little more interesting that fits with the vocal versus is competing against it.
Yeah. I'm sure that's where those harmony vocals come in too.
Yeah, I like to add little touches of harmony here and there in songs. My inclination, which I try to stray away from sometimes too, is just like add harmonies to everything. Because
I think we're all
I like
guilty
it.
of that.
Yeah. But it can be when I listen to at least a bunch of my songs on an album or something of that nature, if they all have harmonies added kind of everywhere, it starts to have this kind of like in some ways, I guess a good, sort of
Like a cohesion.
cohesive sound to it. But a lot of the songs actually that I listen to from other people have just kind of a solo vocal, which can be super impactful on its own. And so I have been trying also actively to write some songs where the harmonies are much smaller touches here and there, and don't have like a whole harmony line over an entire verse.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that a lot too.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you're painting or something like that. It's if you just make everything too dark right away, like the contrast completely goes away. And,
Sure.
yeah, you don't have any of that.
Be too much of a good thing sometimes. Yeah.
And then you're also you play all the drums live, like, right? You're just finger drumming.
Yep, I'm finger drumming.
You managed to just make that sound like a real, like your instinct. Are you thinking a lot about how a drummer is playing it when you're doing that, or are you just kind of doing what you feel?
I like to think that I am, at least.
Like you're not giving them 8 limbs.
Not giving them 8 limbs. No, I'm trying to keep it
my
how
instinct
I would approach a drum kit, and most of the times that I do drums on the finger pad, it's mostly the things that I'm hearing in my head that I can't play on a real drum kit very well, or it would take me forever to get that sound.
Sure.
So I try to keep that in mind, and I often, even when I'm
all that double
finger
bass
drumming,
blasting
I'll
that you
keep
always do.
my foot going like a kick would go, and I'll sort of move my hands sometimes in the time with a snare. So yeah, I'm definitely trying to think of it as a drummer would think of it, but I also think of drums, I think, in a way that having zero training with drums,
right,
comes from it just from what I've enjoyed listening to in the past. And I think of it like my ultimate like sort of dream in terms of if I was going to be a drummer, to be something kind of like Stevie Wonder, where he was able to play things that really fit his songs, even though he might not have perfect, control or timing or some technical stuff, but it always just feels right for the songs. Mm-hmm. And my goal eventually is to be able to have a setup like that where I can have a drum kit going.
Nice.
I can learn what I need to learn to make solid recordings, but right now the drum pad is fantastic.
And this is the digital age, so you can go in there and edit, if you drop the beat or something.
Yeah. It's a luxury.
I feel like what you're talking about is something that really, like, it's actually a person's limitations like that is what gives them a personal style. Mm-hmm. So if you just like that's what I realized about visual art at some point in my adult life. Like my entire childhood, I was like, I'm not really a visual artist. I can't do anything. And then I just didn't do it because of that.
Sure.
And then as an adult, I was like, oh, I can actually just express myself like you're saying with your journal stuff, like it doesn't have to be for anybody else or anything like that. And then if you actually like connect with it and you're like, this is something that I like to do, what ends up happening is that you end up just developing a style through it that is kind of like probably a lot of that it's like your limitations on the instrument, because you're not getting influenced by that like formal understanding of like how it's supposed to be. You're just expressing yourself. That's what always draws me to like learning new instruments. I'm like, oh, this is an instrument that all of a sudden like feels like something that I just want to like fuck around with for a little bit, and I don't care. Like it's about just expressing myself more than it is about kind of like learning how to play it right or something like that.
Definitely.
Yeah, and every time you try a new kind of art or a new instrument, I mean, for me at least, trying a different instrument that I don't know at all gives me new songwriting ideas.
Right. Loops back around. Yeah, eventually you just learn, it's like all you're doing is like translating that understanding of how to be creative with something into something else. And you can apply that, like that's why it just feels to me like anything in life in general, anybody's like the kind of like artistic mindset can be applied to starting a business or whatever it is that you're doing. You just have to actually like want to do it. You have to have that passion inside of you to do it.
Get in there.
You gotta like doing it.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, don't do it. By all means.
Good advice.
Well, I like your song, Ethan. Thanks for bringing a song and sharing with us.
Oh, thanks for giving me the prompt. It's fun.
Can we get into your song? I only saw a brief
it's so hard not to peek at the
snapshot
lyrics.
of your lyrics, and I was like, oh, she did. Because initially I was like, my first idea was I'm going to use every single one of these words. And I'm glad I didn't do that, because it seems like maybe you did.
I sure did. And I did it under 2 minutes.
Like you wrote the lyrics under 2 minutes?
No.
Oh.
Like the song is under 2 minutes.
Oh.
And that wasn't
So we got a real Gilbert and Sullivan situation here.
That was not part of the challenge for myself to make it short, but I just like gobbled them all up and just ran out of words and was like, okay, that's the end.
Wow.
So.
You used a lot of words that weren't even on the list. They're also unusual words.
Well, I had to add some other words so you wouldn't, some other $10 words, $100 words. What's that saying? I don't know. I had to mix in a bunch of long words so that it wouldn't be so glaringly obvious which ones I used. But it's called, before I try to pronounce any of these, I would like to make a formal complaint against YouTube pronunciation videos that use AI instead of people speaking.
Oh.
Have you guys come across this?
I mean, I can't say that I've done that much trying to hear how words are pronounced through
There's
YouTube.
all these competing companies, and they're all done with AI, and if you go listen to them try to pronounce, they can't even pronounce a common word. You know, they're like yesterday or something. Like, you just can't trust them. So yeah, it's the Wild West out there in terms of pronunciation.
It's the inflection on the syllable that is confusing, or actually
the vowel sounds, the
nice.
inflection, anything about it. Some of these words were hard to find a reliable source of them even being used in a sentence. And Spellcheck didn't agree with like 9 of them. So
did you think about using AI, sampling the AI and using it in your song?
No, but that would have been really cool for later. Mispronouncing AI voice. Okay. Just going to file that one away.
There's probably an app for that.
Probably the longest word on this list was cacoraphiophobia. So I used that as my title.
Nice pronunciation.
Thank you. It essentially means focusing on negative thinking. What else to say? Let's not say anything else. Let's just play it.
You turn around looking down from the highway. No tittering notes of hope in your yellow hand. Invigorate on moving station. Let's serve you the day before yesterday. Cacoraphiophobia will get you nowhere. It's an acute dystopia of hyperfocus. No simplicity is scrumptious. Your path will be illustrious. So save your serendipity for a believer. show's on fire. Your simplicity is scrumptious. Your path will be illustrious. So save your showtime frippery and gobbledygook.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I loved it.
Thanks. I wrote the drum fills first. I just literally just recorded the drums first
Amazing.
and then just fit the lyrics to it.
So does this make sense?
It does. And actually,
Is it all is it metaphorical or is it actually all like literal sense?
it makes a sort of literal sense.
Uh-huh.
And I could actually quickly, since there's not that many of them,
Do it.
read you through the lyrics, but replace words like impignate and nudiastertion with
Nudiastertion.
with basically what they mean.
I'm bringing nudiastertion back. I love that word.
So here we go. I'll just read the lyrics with, instead of the unusual words, with the explainable versions. Okay. You turn around looking down from the half circle platform where you're going to turn to go up or downstairs. No crumbs of hope in your pretty lousy hand. Mortgage, all things related to the day before yesterday that served you the day before yesterday. That one I kind of explained. Overly negative thinking will get you nowhere. It's an acute obsession of a part of the body of hyperfocus. Though simplicity is scrumptious, that one you guys get, your path will be curly. So save your serendipity for a believer. Type of pointy shoes, don't dare point your shoes. Your breakfast-related tastes are so bougie. Kind of pointy shoes, just gulp down the news in the group of 25 papers. The shit's on fire. Though simplicity is scrumptious, your path will be curly, so save your showtime frippery and gobbledygook.
Amazing.
Very nice. That's great.
Thank you.
Took a lot of work.
Yeah.
in
To
the
write
word
out-
in the word department, or did it just kind of come together?
It's easier when
Yeah.
you have these words laid out and it's like, okay, here's the puzzle, here's the pieces, put them in.
There were some that were kind of related in certain ways.
Somewhat related.
Yeah, some
Yeah.
like food or gulping. The breakfast one. What's that one?
Gentacular.
Yeah,
Gentacular.
Anything related to breakfast.
That's a good one. We should use that one all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I will say doing this
Waffles
process,
are pretty gentacular.
doing this process made me learn all these words and I can still recall what they are. So
Yeah,
it's kind of good for that,
yeah.
I guess.
You should teach a vocabulary class,
Write
or
a
this is how
song.
kids should learn. how
Write
to-
a song with it.
Yeah, I guess that's
You just
Kinda-
got to show them how to write a song too.
right. Cool song.
Thanks.
Should we get to mine?
Yes.
Mine also has a dramatic feel change in it. I was gonna, like I said, I was gonna do the thing where I use every word, and then I just decided not to. I've been more into like very minimalist words in songs. I don't know. I've been feeling a little kind of just like not blocked, but just like not super inspired in general with songwriting. I started this one off by looking up. I was like, I want to use a guitar chord I've never used, so I looked up some like what is favorite guitar chord or something like that. I don't know. The Hendrix chord is the one that came up.
Oh yeah.
I don't
Nice.
know exactly what
does
it's.
that one has like a minor third and a major third between two different octaves?
It's like that funky sort of 70s sounding one.
Let's see what it is.
Bow, 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 bow.
It's the like one in Purple Haze.
Yeah.
Dominant 7, sharp 9.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I just started the guitar riff with that, and
And it has that mood of wow, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't that kind of describe that chord?
it's all wah. It won't sound like that because I just plucked it in this.
But just mood wise, if that chord just strums out in a movie soundtrack or something,
Right.
it's like there's a little bit of like
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Little
Totally.
feedback building. It's
Yeah.
kind of Jimmy move. Yeah.
I think probably didn't like. I think in the words I don't actually say half pace. I think I say half space. So,
Jumping off point.
So I
That's
just-
all these prompts
exactly. I think that was a complete accident. But anyway, here's the song.
Serendipity was nudious tertian. Sometimes when the moment passes you in the half state of the moon, you wonder, how do I know that it wasn't the one? Sometimes when the moment passes you in the half state of the moon, you wonder, how do I know that it wasn't the one? Wasn't the one. The day before, 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 the day. Oh, 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 oh. Sometimes when the moment passes you in the half state of the moon, you wonder, how do I know that it wasn't the one? Sometimes when the moment passes you in the half state of the moon, you wonder, how do I know that it wasn't the one? One day before, 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 day.
Cool.
Nice little jaunty tune.
Yeah,
Maybe half state will be one of the 4,000 words added to the dictionary
I
later
hope
this
so.
year.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, I thought of it as kind of a, I don't know, just kind of like a small little vignette. I guess it's just kind of like waking up in the middle of the night and thinking, what if 2 days ago was the moment of serendipity that will change your life forever, and you just didn't even notice it. But nudiostertion, that's my new word. I'm gonna be saying that shit was nudiostertion all
Maybe
the
it's
time.
called a $5 word?
$5?
$5
$10,000?
$10,000 word.
No, that's a $10,000 pyramid.
It probably came from a game show somehow, whatever it is.
Yeah, so that's the song. Not feeling super inspired in general, but got one out.
Are you guys going to be using, besides nudiostertion, any of these vocab words?
I actually end up using serendipity a lot
Sure.
at work because people have it's often that they have the exact amount of money for an order.
Oh, I thought you were going to say because there's a common strain of weed called serendipity.
Oh, there might be. I should make one if there's not.
Scrumptious serendipity.
That does sound like a strain name for sure. Yeah.
Gentacular's fun to say.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to try to make that one happen.
Yeah. How would you say it?
Oh, you'd like to have a meeting? Perhaps a gentacular one before noon time.
Breakfast will be provided.
Before, a breakfast meeting.
I like it.
It doesn't matter what time you meet. Everything is Zoom now for
Right.
the most part.
All I got to do is have a waffle in hand.
And you're always on call, and everyone knows that. And time doesn't matter.
Yeah, so what are you doing in this time doesn't matter part of the world? Is there anything you want to tell people about?
Let me get my manifesto out. I'll have some thoughts. No. I think, I don't have anything necessarily that's going to be coming out in the next couple of months or weeks or anything of that nature musically. Although I do have something I'm hoping to get done this next year, which will be another collection of songs, some are based on the
Cool.
60-song game that I took part of, and other things I've been writing since then too.
And what would people follow to be aware of that stuff?
Sure. So pretty much everything that when I do post anything about my music, it'd be in my Instagram probably, which is just Ethan Fox Tucker.
Awesome.
And at some point I might set up an artist sort of Instagram or some sort of social media thing as well under just Fox Tucker, because that's what my recorded stuff is currently under on Spotify and some other sites. But yeah, I think that's the goal for me in this next, 6 months or so, is to kind of get a little more of a plan going on how to release some music, because it's been a little while since I've released anything. But it's definitely been, a strange kind of incubation of a lot of time and less activities going on the last, 8 months or so. So
Yeah.
definitely have had a lot of time to make things in music, even though it doesn't sometimes the sort of cloud and pall of what's going on have
What's
been
the
hard.
point?
Yeah, exactly. It can be tough to be motivated occasionally, but
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm just looking forward to releasing some more music into the world
Cool.
this next year.
Excited to hear it.
And yeah, go from there.
Nice.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I'd like to thank Victor Nash at Destination Universe for recording this very episode.
Yep, sitting in
Today.
Destination Universe. Thanks, Vic. I also got a record coming out this week if anybody wants to check that out. And
what's that called?
It's called Our Transparent Future.
Mm-hmm.
Recorded with Ryan Oxford at the Center for Light, Sound and
Color and Light?
Therapy. Color, Sound Therapy, Light, Color. Anyway, and y'all did amazing backup vocals on
That's
it.
right.
Some bass playing on it. Yeah, it's great. Excited to just put things out.
And we will be releasing, is it
Honest Jams
Bandcamp?
compilation.
Yeah, compilation. So at least three 10-song compilations of the songs we recorded so far on the podcast.
All the songs we recorded.
Coming at some point
One
soon.
place.
All right, well, there's only one thing left to say.
We can bang on pots and pans.
And still kick out some honest jams.
Honest Jams podcast is written, recorded, and produced by Eyal Alvis and A. Walker Spring, and edited by me. Reach us at honestjamspodcast@gmail.com. Special thanks to Victor Nash for mixing our theme. Special thanks to Oogie. And thank you for listening. We can't wait to hear what you make.